No, thank you. Thanks so much. So I believe the theme this year for this annual event is resilience. And I think resilience may mean different things to different people. But
Yeah.
I'm going to, I was down with COVID for in the hospital for almost a month, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that story to take the examples of what it really means to be resilient as a result of that live experience, rather than give you a theoretical experience.
Yeah.
So first thing for me is resilience is all about staying power. You can bend, but you will not break. It doesn't mean bending
Mm.
isn't allowed, but I
Mm.
think in the pandemic, the whole importance of resilience is key, whether it's individual or whether it's organization. And I'm pretty sure that that's one of the reasons why this is a topic today. So for me, when I was so to be clear about some dates, I was admitted to the hospital on 24th of November with some amount of fever and breathlessness. And after being in a room for 2 days, I was put in the ICU because my oxygen levels dropped pretty dramatically. And in that period that I was there, so I was in the ICU for about 3 weeks. And my levels went down quite badly. And later on, of course, the doctor said it was touch and go, something I wasn't aware when I was actually going through the experience. And
Mm.
now I'm sitting here and talking to you. So, 3 weeks in the ICU, about 5 or 6 days in the room, uh, constituted my experience. But I just want to take a few examples from what happened there to talk about how holistic well-being seems to be so critical to build resilience, because
Yeah.
it was nothing but an example of resilience when I was there. I had a staying power, right? And my
Yeah.
doctor jokingly told me that, you're probably the only guy who was conscious through a room, a COVID ICU, a non-COVID ICU, and an OPD, and you could write a book on hospitals and their management. But this story is not about that. So, for
Mm.
example, I think the first thing is when I was in the ICU, why did I actually get there? I think I got there because I was not taking care of my physical well-being properly. My
Mm.
lungs were not in a good shape. Well, contributed in part by the pollution of Delhi, but that notwithstanding, I had been an ex-smoker. Although I gave up smoking 27, 28 years ago, but I used to smoke up to 30, 40 cigarettes a day. So the impact of that, even after so many years, meant that my lungs had a weakness. So when the
Mm.
problem hit me, it hit me pretty bad. And this brings me
Yeah.
to the first aspect of holistic well-being, which is the aspect of physical well-being. I mean, I can tell you that as a youth, I also have a daughter who's 25 years old. What I find is that there is a lot of focus on physical exercises, for example. But as far as diet is concerned, eating the right thing so that you can stay intrinsically healthy physically is
Yeah.
definitely something which can be a problem area.
Mm.
Nowadays, we have these burgers and fries and a cold drink to follow along with that, which is very fashionable. So I think physical well-being to me helps build resilience, because in my case, that was not a good feature. So I learned
Mm.
by my mistake, and at this moment, I'm actually on a very different lifestyle journey as far as the physical aspect is concerned. The
Mm.
second thing I realized was that when I was there were a lot of interesting people who were helping me. I
Mm.
mean, I had this nurse, and there were many people, I mean, all around who were brilliant and so caring and serving. So, like, this nurse took very special care of me, and she found out what was special in the menu, because I used to get so bored by eating the kind of food, and I wasn't even having a great appetite. So she asked me what all I liked, and she
Mm.
actually, bullied the pantry to give me something of my choice, which I thought
Mm.
was fantastic. The second thing I found was that there was a lady doctor. This lady doctor was fighting with a pharmacy to say that why don't you have the cheapest generic medicine available for this particular ailment? Why are you making the patients in the ICU buy more expensive medicines? And everybody is compelled to do it at that time. Now, to me, these were lovely examples of service and serving, which I found, and I was really and truly grateful. And one of the things that came to me, see, I mean, I've been a follower of many practices of holistic well-being, and one of the practices, therefore, which I have been focusing on a lot, and I believe it helped me a great deal here, was the practice of gratitude. What happens in our life is normally we are very used to complaining. Uski kameez meri kameez se safed kaise. So there is comparison, there is complaint, there is crib. But we forget to catch people doing things right, and we forget to catch things which are going right for us. So I saw the importance of gratitude, and I expressed this gratitude, by the way, whenever I saw such a doctor, whenever I saw such a sister. And I think in turn, I got back so much more from them because I was also appreciating them. So I think the second principal learning is emotional well-being, which can be anchored by gratitude. And I would really like to take this opportunity to invite everyone who is present in this call to just take a moment and write down a few things that you're grateful for. Just take this opportunity to think of a positive gossip, either about somebody else or about something that you're grateful for. So just take a minute, write a few things, and why don't you put it in the chat box so that I can also see what is it that you're saying.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be so.
And I think you can read some of them, which are coming through.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm waiting.
I love what you just said, POSIP, which is a positive gossip. I love the play on that.
I don't have an IPR claim to this. There is a good friend of mine called Nitya Shanti, who I have been following for the last 11 years, who's been a big inspiration in my life, teaching me many of these things, including the power of gratitude. And this is a term that he often used and has uses.
Yeah, I think gratitude, I really love what you're saying about gratitude and the kind of role it can play in emotional well-being. I think we often, just daily things also, we often end up taking them for granted, and we forget to be grateful for them. Like being grateful for a meal that is being served to you, that has been cooked for you. I mean, that's something that's very valuable, and we just take it for granted. It's just something that's happening. Maybe your mom is doing it for you, or maybe your cook is doing it for you, or maybe your parent is doing it for you. So we just end up taking that for granted. So I really like it.
No, thank you.
So I'm seeing somebody write in chat, somebody saying that they're grateful to see us. I'm guessing that's directed to you. Grateful to see you. Somebody's saying they're grateful for Prava. And somebody is saying that I'm very grateful to the communities that I've been a part of. Meenakshi is saying I'm grateful for being part of Fifth Space, where I can explore myself and my interests, where I'm allowed to make mistakes and learn from them. This space has been truly nurturing.
Beautiful.
And somebody else is also saying that I'm grateful to be happy and I'm a part of Prabha. And Naman is saying, I'm grateful for my colleagues, Nehal, Meenakshi, Astha, and Sukanya. They are really beautiful people. Pankhuri is saying, I'm grateful for the potential to be able to learn anything I want to learn. Oh, that's so nice. There are many replies that are coming in. Somebody is saying that they're grateful for their mother, who at 82 years of age expresses her love and concern for her attitude to stay healthy.
Lovely, Sudha. I think that's really great. Yeah, so I think there are big things and there are small things. I mean, sometimes we are grateful for the big things, but we forget the fact that our in-breath is something to be grateful for, because it means we are alive. So I think if you can find these moments, and I would say sit down and write 108 things you're grateful for. And it's a magic number. And, normally it's very easy to say 5 to 7 things, but if you have to make a list of 108 things, Just imagine. That will help you to dive deeper into the recesses of your heart and actually feel that energy of, emotional well-being by connecting with your heart and a sense of gratitude. So this is the second thing that happened. The third thing that happened was that so many of my friends, they came together. They came together in different ways. So there were a few of my friends who were connected with my family, because obviously nobody could really get connected with me whilst I was in the ICU, etc. So I have a friend, Sunil Agarwal. I have a friend, Rajan Swaroop. These are my childhood friends. They were there and they were talking to my family and they were trying to do their own bit from the sides. I had Nitya Shanti, who is really my kind of my soulmate and my guide and my sakha, who kind of helped me move to the right diet at the right time. Because I realized that, I was suffering from constipation because of the kind of stuff I was eating in the hospital. And he gave a very simple suggestion and it helped me completely shift the needle. I had a few people, Divya Ohri, Anita, they were helping from the perspective of organizing a meditation session. In fact, there used to be a meditation session every 7:30 p.m. One group was my IIT group, one group was my IIM group, one group was another group of healers that I have been associated with. So really, I can't even begin to name the number of people who were there. And to me, this is the third aspect, which is the aspect of having a great set of friends. In fact, I don't know if people are aware, but there is a 75-year-old Harvard study that went on for 75 years. And it said that the biggest aspect that gets you to be healthy, healthful, is not the medication and not the physical exercise, but the presence of good friends in your life. So this is the relational aspect of things. That's the relational well-being, if I might call it that. Having great relationships is another great thing of well-being, which can help build resilience. When you're down, just imagine a friend with you. And you can call them whatever names you like. You can share whatever you like with them. They are there for you at all times. So this was my third thing. I have known it always, but how I used it. The fourth thing was, and the fourth thing that happened for me was, see, when I left home, when I was leaving home, there was a very interesting backdrop. When my wife was 25 years old, it was my wife to be at that time, my fiance, Renuka. Her father was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, never to come back. And when I was being taken to the hospital, my daughter was 25 years old. And one of the things I did was I made a commitment to both of them. I said, there will not be a repeat of this incident. For sure. I am going to be back come what may. Now, today the doctor tells us that, well, you almost didn't live up to that commitment. But what I can tell you is that having that commitment was a very, very big anchor for me in my journey and my fight and my resilience. So what I find is that commitment, of course, is part of your willpower and your mind. So the whole mental well-being comes from exercising a sense of strong commitment. When you will yourself to do things, you can actually do those things. And of course, there is something else which is needed beyond the will to make it stay. And the other thing what I realized was that when I was there, either I could think of the past saying, where all did I screw up by, in terms of my physical well-being, and therefore I was where I was. Or I could start thinking about the future saying, what is going to happen to me? Am I going to really have, horrible lungs for life? But I didn't do either of that. I stayed in the present moment. And what I realized was that staying in the present moment can be beautifully done simply by watching your breath. There's nothing more to do. Breath is your constant companion, right? So this is the second exercise I want to just invite this group for a minute. Why don't you just become aware of your breath? We always have our breath as a companion, but we never become aware. So just take a minute, become aware of your breath. As you're breathing in, become aware of that. As the breath goes inside your nose, you may find a cooling sensation. towards the top of your nose. So close your eyes and feel that. A cooling sensation as the breath enters your nostrils, and a slightly warm sensation perhaps on your upper lip as the breath leaves your nostrils. Just feel that. Just be with it. With your eyes closed. And tell me, how does that feel? How does this feel?
Very calming.
Very calming, right?
Yeah.
So the fact is that, you have a lot of things and a lot of grief for the past and a lot of anticipated anxiety for the future.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is, in the present moment, there are no problems. So I often had to rely on this. I had to rely on this vehicle time and again. Imagine in an ICU, there are people struggling close to you. There were people who were having huge issues, and they were shouting, they were screaming. One or two people actually died while I was there, and their bodies were taken away. Now, through that, if you have to live, then you have to rely on something which is your deep anchor. And my breath was my anchor. So to me, the fourth aspect of well-being is mental well-being. Creating a sense of willpower, and staying in the present moment. This really takes care of a lot of things, if you ask me. Helps build that resilience. And the last thing I would say is, see, I am a follower of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And one of the things that I have been trying to do is to invite the Mother to actually take over my life in every respect, in every way. And I used to have this interesting conversation with the Mother when I was there, saying, listen, I have to get back. I have to honor my commitment. Help me do that. And I'm prepared for anything else. Help me also understand what is the lesson I have to learn about my life, because of which you're taking me through this experience. This to me is a deep anchorage of the soul. So whilst mental well-being and those practices are of the mind, emotional well-being and those practices are of the heart, physical well-being is of the body, spiritual well-being is of the soul. So your soul also needs an anchorage. It needs to connect to something which is much higher, bigger and wider than you. And whether you believe in the divine or not, I'm pretty sure it's not difficult to believe in a power higher than us, which perhaps created this universe and holds it all together, right?
Yeah.
So I think if I were to therefore summarize my learning from all of this, my resilience came from these practices of well-being, which I did there and then on the spot. One big miss, physical well-being, which I'm doing now. The second, emotional well-being through gratitude, mental well-being through breath awareness and a sense of commitment and anchoring myself in that, which gave me a positive mental attitude. Relational well-being with all of these people around me. And one person I forgot to mention, although he must be first in the list, is a gentleman called Dr. Rakesh Gupta. Rakesh is a schoolmate of my wife Renuka. And it so happened that we found him at the right time, and it was his advice because of which I got admitted. And he's a senior consultant in Apollo. And he really looked after me, because even in absentia, when he could not be there in the COVID ICU, he made sure that he was on top of things and took many decisions, which meant that I stayed where I did and I benefited from it. So really, thank you very much, Rakesh, for your presence in our life. Couldn't have asked for more. And so relational well-being, and last but not the least, spiritual well-being. I think to me, these are the mantras. If we can practice, we will find ourselves building an enormous amount of resilience and take our life to the next level of being. So with that, I end my conversation. and I am happy to take any questions, whether from you or from the audience.
Thank you so much. I really, really loved what you spoke about. It's really, I mean, just the idea of breaking down resilience into the different categories that it could be broken down into, and having something that cater to each one of that. I think I had just a moment of epiphany where I just felt that, oh my God, I didn't think about this in this manner, and that's just really beautiful. I really agree with what somebody in the chat has written, that this was the most mindful engagement in the entire day. And so just really thank you for
Thank you.
creating that space. It really, I just really feel a lot calmer and just like happy also. I'm just smiling because it
Lovely.
was that kind of a space. So thank you so much for that. I'm seeing somebody say admirable resilience, they're saying. And somebody's saying that this was a wonderful experience. If anybody has any questions for Vineet sir, anything about from what he has shared, or any other question about well-being you have in general, please put it in the chat box and I will pass it on to him and we can get your response to that question.
In the meantime, you have any question?
Yeah, I was about to ask. I was like, maybe I can ask my questions by the time I'm waiting for other people to ask. I was just wondering, do you think that I mean, if we have, so many things that we're looking at being catering to your, your physical well-being, your emotional well-being, and your spiritual well-being also. Do you think maybe there are ways in which we can make this a part of your like routine? Maybe it becomes a habit. There are certain things that you can make into a habit, and that's how you can practice them. Because otherwise, we think that we're going to practice these things. I mean, I've been thinking about practicing mindfulness for as long as I can remember, but I've just not been able to do that because that's just not found the space in my time. So do you think
Yes.
how does one make that happen? How do you make that a part of your day or
Yeah.
routine? Yeah.
No, I think it's a great question, and the fact is that as they say, God of small things. So if you can create a subroutine with some of these. So for example, gratitude. I mean, just before you're going to sleep, can you just think of 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for in the day? One of the things that I started doing, and I maintained it for a pretty long time, was a gratitude diary. There is a guy called Pritish Sankhe, I think. I downloaded his diary on my app as an app on my phone. So nowadays we are all used to devices, right? So
Yeah.
it's a very cute app. So you sit down at the end of the day and you set a reminder. So at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., whatever time you want, it will give you a reminder saying, well, time to think of an affirmation and time to write down your gratitude. So it's a great aid, for example. Then, from a physical well-being standpoint, I have seen some of these health apps now inviting you to drink a glass of water every hour.
Yeah, I use that.
Correct. So 200 ml into 8 such reminders is 1600 ml down, which is part of your 2-liter target if you want,
Yeah.
And as far as breath is concerned, I always invite people. There is a beautiful video called One Moment Meditation. If you Google it and you can watch it, the problem is that meditation is sometimes thought of as a very long activity. Now, when you're really trying to go on a divine journey and trying to discover nirvana, if I might call it that, then your periods of meditation can be very long. But if you're simply trying to connect in the moment, then all you need is a minute. You don't need more than that. So all I would say is don't think of it as a very laborious activity. You're in a boring meeting, just go for a minute's meditation there and then, or maybe after lunch, or even if you're sitting on the pot for that matter, how does it matter? So as long as you're conscious, I mean, one thing that I have done in my life is I have become conscious about coming back to that center, like a great badminton player who after taking every shot will go to the center of the court. Just keep coming back to the center whenever you remember. And the center is nothing but your breath. So if this becomes an auto program in you that I have to keep coming back to my breath, you will enjoy the benefits of that tremendously. So I think these are a few tips and tricks. Besides, of course, friends, I think relating with friends, we all enjoy, but only thing is take those conversations deeper. Don't just talk about the weather and do gossip, as I said, do possip.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Those are some really useful tips. Thank you for sharing those. All right, we have a few questions in chat. So somebody is asking that since I mentioned in your introduction that you're a certified pranic healer, so somebody is asking if you could share something about that. And I think that's my question too. I'm really intrigued and interested in knowing what that is like.
Yeah, sure. So I think I can only explain this at an intellectual level given the time, because otherwise it's probably a separate session and I'm actually not authorized to teach. But see, there are many forms of energy healing, and pranic healing is one such form. The principle is that when our body is diseased, the disease is a function of some energy imbalance somewhere. So the energy is either stuck or depleted. If the energy is stuck, then our energy storehouse is going to have a higher amount of that energy, which is undesirable. If the energy is depleted, then there is going to be a depletion. So pranic healing allows you to sense, teaches you to sense this energy in the various chakras that we have in our body. Now, I unfortunately don't have the time to get into this, but if you were to Google chakras in your body, you will be able to find that there are some 7 major chakras and many other minor chakras. So with pranic healing, you can actually sense which of the chakras might be, over or might be under in terms of energy, and you can actually provide healing. So in the advanced healing techniques, there is color therapy. There is also, psychotherapy, which is available. Psychological issues can also be healed with that. So that is how pranic healing is to be used. In fact, interestingly, when I was in the ward, in the COVID ICU, one way of recovering myself was to do pranic healing for people around me. Because, when you heal others, you heal yourself. That's the principle of any energy. So, I think that's probably all I can say about pranic healing at this moment in time.
No, I think that makes for a great introduction. And somebody can definitely Google and find out more, and maybe even get in touch with you to find out more. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Somebody is mentioning that they have spoken to you in an informal setting, but it's amazing to see you in this avatar. It gave me a chance to pause in a busy day.
Thank you.
Okay. Somebody is asking, it's often too easy to fall into procrastination and not prioritize self-overwork. How do we move beyond this procrastination?
Yeah, I myself procrastinate, to be honest. So, how do I really talk and teach about it? But there is only one perspective I want to give. Sometimes in life, there is a need to take a pause. I don't think we value pause very much. A bamboo tree doesn't come out of the earth for 3 years. And by the 4th year, it is the tallest of trees. So I think sometimes some of us need that space to gather ourselves, to gather our courage, to gather our wisdom, and then really go for it, hammer and tong. So I agree and understand that procrastination can be a problem. But if you understand and if you can affirm for yourself that, listen, something is waiting to happen, allow it to happen in the right time, in divine timing, you will probably invite the right energies which will also help you get out of procrastination. So that is probably all I will say, but let me honestly tell you that I procrastinate as well.
I think we all do. It's just how it is. But it's really valuable what you're saying about us not valuing pause. Just pausing in life. I think that can be a really important practice that we could all really use. I mean, I'm also I don't know what race am I busy with, that I'm just going from one thing to another. And I think everybody could use some pause in their life. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have another question. Do you have any advice for young people on creating communities that can help them take care of well-being?
So, I have been trying to take these sessions in the corporate world as well. And I cannot underscore the importance of a community. Because you'll realize that when you're trying to make any change in your lifestyle, any habit, whether you're trying to give up one or whether you're trying to adopt one, having a friend by your side is so helpful, right? So if you're trying to give up smoking, you try to avoid the company of those who smoke, and you try and take on one or two more people with you saying, यार चल यार तू भी बंद करना, दोनों इकट्ठे करते हैं. So that's really
Yeah.
like the power of community. So what I would simply say is, one of the things I used to do in the corporate is, immediately after a session, I would form a WhatsApp group of people who had attended the session. And I would invite and encourage them to share how they were actually using anything that was being taught to them and bringing it into their personal life. So it was very beneficial. And as a facilitator, I would probably also, put in one or two examples or one or two inspirational stuff to keep this community going. I can tell you that, the level of response might be 2 to 5%. And really, the orchestrator or the sutradhar of the community has to work very hard. Because all of us seem to have this attention deficit disorder. We just lose track. Karte nahi hai hum log. But to me, that's one nice way of holding each other. And of course, you can hold each other accountable if you're really good friends and answerable. But at least you can hold it lightly as well as a community.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I think it's just being able to find that community. I think that just eases all the stress and all the work that you have to do. It just adds so much value and it just becomes so much easier. I mean, we've been hearing it for such a long time that, that having a friend to do something is just going to make your life so much easier. And while we know it, we often forget to practice it. I mean, we'll have friends that we're hanging out with, but we'll forget that we can actually engage in like a deep conversation with them, and that can really add value to our lives. So
but for people who are present here, what I would say is that one person who has been who's been really inspiring me, and he's actually set up communities and he is currently in the process of expanding those, is Nitya Shanti. NITHYASHANTI. Please Google him. Please join his community, because he really helps you in the whole space of holistic well-being. So I would really recommend that very, very seriously to anybody who hasn't tried that.
Okay, I'm just going to put that in chat as well. And another question that has come up is that as students, there is a large influence that is there on academics, right? Our lives are generally influenced by, students' lives are generally influenced by academics, and that's what it's revolving around. But so what advice do you have for them to make time for, personal life, for their well-being, for family, for friends? So how do they really do that and go about that?
So I think a couple of things. See, one is, as I shared some of these practices are simple to do. They're not difficult, right? So for example, if it's breath awareness and when it takes you a minute, and even if you do it, let's say 3 to 5 times in a day, which you can find the time for, this is not an issue of time. This is an issue of knowing. So for example, if you know today that breath is your constant companion and that you can use it to feel mindful, to feel calmer, or if you can simply, remind yourself of things that you're grateful for, this is not a time consuming thing. But the other aspect I would say is, for example, can you play a small game with your family? I was taught a very nice game, so there is a game called Rose, Thorn, Bud. You sit together at a table when you're having dinner. Rose is something that is your high point of the day. What is it that you felt good about? Ask everybody what's your rose for the day. Simply a thorn. What is it that really bugged you today, and what did you learn from it? So convert the negative thorn into a positive as well. And bud means that what is it that you're thinking of and planning to do the next day? Something that you're looking forward to. So, we've had some interesting conversations even around rose, thorn, bud at times. So there are ways of even using this time when you're working from home and with the family. But the most important thing I would say to people is, whilst you're in your academics, can you at least take the time to figure out what is it that you're really passionate about and what is it that you're really good at? Because if you can figure out your thrill and your skill, then you can figure out the right drill into which these two will come together. You know, I call this phenomenon resonance, and that's the name of my organization, in fact. So when you start to do that and engage in your thrill, your passion and your proficiency, then life really rocks for you. You know, then you can overcome many aspects and be totally resilient. Yeah. So then you don't manage time, then you align your life in a way that time just vanishes in terms of its importance.